Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So, ladies and gentlemen, David Cohen. I'm going to speak really loud.
That's a cool tradition, by the way.
I like that tradition.
I'm not sure about the cow chairs, but I like that tradition.
The cow chairs? I don't know. I think they're pretty comfortable.
As long as they don't move, it's cool.
They move, it's okay. Everybody hear me okay? So I'm going to speak really, really loud. All right. If we can't hear me and I start to fade off, just throw something at me and I'll be more than happy to increase the volume. Well, thanks for showing up this evening. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
You have some experience with Startup Grind.
I do.
David, yeah, go ahead.
Last year, there's an annual one.
International event, yeah.
It was at the Computer Museum in the Bay Area, I guess last year.
Last year,
It just happened this year, right?
Yeah, it was,
so it was a year ago. And did an onstage thing, and actually I was sick that day. And I came anyway. And I'm starting to feel like I might be getting sick today. So maybe Startup Grind makes me sick. I don't know. Something like that. I'm not sure. We'll see.
We're going to make you better. We'll make you better. We got to speak with the man, Derek Anderson.
Awesome. Yeah.
Derek is the founder of Startup Grind, so you had that opportunity, which was awesome. So
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And it was a great venue. They had a ton of people there.
Yeah.
From all over the world.
This year was awesome too. So it's a great event. We had probably, I don't know, we had 60 chapter leads last year. We had 150 some this year. So all over the world. So it's pretty cool. If you get a chance, go to startupgrind.com and look at the events. It's been really good.
Also, I got to give a shout out to Galvanize. I always love coming here. This place is so cool.
It's awesome.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. You as well. Well, cool. Well, let's just start out just real quick so people can kind of get a reference of just a little bit about your background, kind of where you were born, kind of, what you've been doing, that kind of stuff. I don't know, I think anybody knows where you were born. Were you born here?
Does anyone know where I was born?
Anybody?
No. DeLand, Florida.
DeLand?
Anybody guess that? No. A tiny little town of 40,000 people in Central Florida.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm used to small towns, which is why I like Boulder. Small town.
Boulder. Yeah. So you came out here when in Boulder? What time?
I moved here 20 years ago, and it was to start a company. So after school, I had one job interview in my life. It was a good interview. I got the job. And I decided, this sucks. I don't really want to do that anymore. That was programming, I was a computer scientist, coder. Got that job, and then started a company, and I've started many companies since then, and never had another job interview. So I wish I didn't have the one.
That was the motivation for starting your company, is you don't want to have another job.
Yeah, job interviews are terrible.
Okay. All right. Is it like raising money? Isn't that kind of like getting a job interview? Sort of? Maybe? A little. We can talk about that.
I mean, it's, it just quickly I realized that working for somebody else wasn't going to be my thing.
Okay.
And I did it for about a year, and I was programming. I liked the programming part. And, the first startup I ever did was basically a better version of the people that hired me. Right? It was ambulance dispatch, right? That's what they happen to be doing. So I was like, this sucks. We can do this better, and left and did it better, and created a company around it. And, you really never know how you're going to get your startup ideas, but seeing something and saying, I can unsuck that, is actually a pretty good way to start a company.
Unsucking that. So that's good. There you go. Yeah, the ambulance that we kind of destroyed. So you started several companies. All successful? All done? Okay. Tell us a little bit
Any
about
successful entrepreneurs here that did not have a failure in their history? Nobody, right? No. Yeah. So I guess technically Techstars is my fourth, real startup.
Okay.
I had one that worked really well before that. That's actually the ambulance one. That's why I can have them drive by whenever I want. We control the dispatch systems. Right? That was probably AMR or Private or somebody.
There you go.
We did all the dispatch systems for all those ambulance companies all around the world. Had about 40% market share of that, right?
Nice.
The logistics around that. That worked well. We sold it to a public company. I had a massive failure after that. With a company that was very much like Foursquare, but too early, before you guys had app stores and iPhones. Just no way to get distribution back then, and so we folded that one and lost some money. Then another one that was in the music space that we sold pretty early. I started angel investing, and I like that better. I think it's just more fun. You get to do it at the meta level, right? Instead of starting companies, you get to start hundreds, which is really cool.
So that's when you started doing your angel investing, right?
Yeah, somewhere in the middle of all that, I met a 5'4" woman named Sue Coots. Anybody know Sue? Awesome. Big bundle of energy. Starting a company called Solidware that I was like, oh, you're raising money, like this seems cool. And I wrote a $50,000 check, and I said, this is my educational tuition. I have no idea what I'm doing. If you don't mind teaching me, I'll give you this money, right? And so I learned how to invest by just doing it. And then, joined an angel network, which was terrible. Didn't work at all for me. Quit that, and then started blogging. I had a blog back then called Colorado Startups.
Oh, startups, yeah.
I just started pretending like I knew what I was doing, which any entrepreneur can identify with. And started talking about startups, and then I wanted to invest, and I made a bunch of angel investments, probably 15 or 20. And then I thought, no, this sucks. This is a good way to lose money. I don't think I'm doing this right, And Techstars was my way to do it better.
Okay, so with that, explain to us, to the folks here, how that all got started. For those who don't know how Techstars got started.
Well, do people even know what it is?
Does anybody know what Techstars is? Everybody, well, why don't you tell what it is?
Yeah,
Start from the bottom.
Techstars is, in my view, it's a global ecosystem for entrepreneurs to bring technology to the market, right? So we run accelerator programs. We have venture capital around that. We're all over the place. We're in Europe or throughout the U.S., so most major cities, startup hubs in the U.S., we have an accelerator program. We run 18 of them a year around the world. So Boulder was the first one. They provide a little bit of capital, so you get about $120,000 to go through the accelerator. And then on average, Techstars companies raise $2 million after 3 months after the program from the venture capital community. In total, they've raised about $1.2 billion. There are about 550 companies we funded that way. And we've had about 65 of them get acquired now. So a big network that's now global that helps entrepreneurs kind of with an unfair advantage through the network.
You guys started in 2007, right? Is that
We did, yeah. So in 2006, I emailed this guy named Brad Feld.
Yeah, I think
You heard of Brad Feld? I actually did not know Brad, but he was an investor in Solidware.
Yes.
And I saw him on the cap table, and I was like, oh, I got something in common with this guy. You know how you're supposed to have something in common before just randomly emailing someone? That was my thing. And I wrote him and I said, can I get a meeting? I'd like to tell you about this idea that I have for, essentially what would become known as a startup accelerator. Back then we didn't have a name for it. And I asked him for a 15-minute meeting. And he said, yeah, no problem. 3.5 months from now I can do that. I said, okay, fine. So 3.5 months went by, and I got my 15-minute meeting, and I came in with a crappy trifold brochure of Techstars. I was like, this is Techstars, like, what do you think? And I had a piece of paper with like 4 bullet points on it that I wanted to make sure to talk about. That was my pitch. 10 minutes into the meeting, after I described Techstars, he said, I'm in. I'll invest $25,000. As long as you're not a crook or a flake. I said, I think I can take that bet, So we started to work together. I never had anybody invest in me in a 10-minute meeting before. That was cool. I gave him 5 minutes back on his calendar, which I think he really appreciated. And we built up, this mentor network together and sort of shaped the website and kind of headed towards that first program. And I guess he figured out I wasn't a crook or a flake, and he increased the amount he invested. I was putting up most of the money at that time. Sorry for hitting the mic. But he was just putting in a little. And eventually he became one of the 4 co-founders of Techstars and was really involved.
So 2 other co-founders you had that are part of that.
So David Brown is a guy that all 4 companies I did with him. And so he's a founder of Techstars. Been working with him for 25 years across these 4 businesses. He runs all the operations of Techstars. And he says we're work spouses, and I think that's really weird.
Did he send you presents?
So I don't know why I repeat it, but
Nice.
and then Jared Polis, who is somebody you may know, is a congressman for Colorado, and a great guy. He started Pro Flowers and Blue Mountain Arts, the greeting card thing, and these were the 4 founders who put up the original sort of very small amount of money to test this idea.
So when you say global community, you weren't global when you started. You were in Boulder.
We were Boulder when we started.
And you were in Boulder for a reason. And I'd like to explain why you chose Boulder. So why not anywhere else
so
at the time?
the question that I get asked a lot is, why did you start Techstars, of all things, in Boulder, Colorado, right? And the answer was, because that's where I live. It seems kind of obvious, right? I had no vision that it would be, in Europe and growing like crazy and have all this, amazing companies that we work with that it just really scale up. So, the vision was, okay, in 20 years, we want Boulder to be better as a startup community. That was the 20-year vision. And also, angel investing kind of sucks. Like, to go to a coffee shop or a place like this and meet one of you people and write a $50,000 check is just idiotic, right? It's crazy. We want more people doing it, right? But you have to admit, it's kind of crazy. That's how most angel investors lose money, because they don't actually know what they're investing in, right? It's through the relationships that you learn what you want to really invest in. So we said, let's do this 3-month thing, this high-quality filtered context, where they all work together as mentors to help these 10 companies. And that turned out to be magic. That was really game-changing for the companies. It got the whole community behind 10 companies every year. That's the magic.
So there's a process that you guys get the applications, you pick 10, right? And then these mentors, and I want to get to the mentor part in a minute, but after that they go through 3 months, and then what happens?
Yeah, so for each Techstars program, there's 10 companies, sometimes 11 or 12, sometimes 9, about 10, and there's about 100 mentors. So across the system, about 1,800 mentors, and they're all over the world, right? These are the founders and CEOs of the companies that we all use every day, right? These are, the best entrepreneurs and operators with the most experience in the community. The idea is, you apply to Techstars, and we sort of get experiences with you. We try to have multiple experiences with you somehow, either a pitch meeting or just hanging out, getting to know you. Usually that starts on Skype. It's a huge process to go from 1,000 companies down to 10. There's a 1% acceptance rate. Harvard and MIT are like 3%, right? So I mean, it's a challenge to do that.
Absolutely.
And then in the program, once you're in, there's this magic stuff that happens. And mostly it's about network. It's about actual, people think of mentorship and it's like, well, okay, so I listen to somebody talk and that's mentorship. No. But what mentorship is in our context is you're going to have 5 or 10 new best friends, right, at the end of this process that are there for your whole career, right, that are part of you, right? And so we try to facilitate that deep interaction. You literally see mentors writing code, you see mentors picking apart wording, I mean, really detailed stuff. And they're all contributing whatever they know. Each company works with 5 or 10 mentors, not all of them. And that's a natural self-selection process. We push you to get the product into the market. We push you to really get the business model right. And before you step on the gas, get that arrow more or less in the right direction, so you don't end up going the wrong way really fast, which happens in the wild. It can accelerate failure. It's an accelerator, right? If the thing is doomed, we're going to figure that out, right? And that's actually good for people because it saves time. We can help them, find something new to do. And then there's this demo day at the end. You typically see about 1,000 investors show up. In New York, it might be 2,000. Here, it might be a little less. And the result is typically that most companies that want to will raise some capital, and then we have companies that bootstrap. Awesome companies. Many of them wear white coats to events, and like this guy, bootstrappers, right? They don't need capital. They got an awesome thing, right? So that's okay too. It's not all about raising money.
Yeah. So what makes a good mentor? You have you have some rules, basically. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, we've fired a lot of mentors over the years, and it's hard to do. It's hard to fire people when they're working for free, but we're good at it. So I wrote this thing called the Mentor Manifesto a long time ago, and it's like all of the traits of like how to be a good mentor. First of all, I always, it feels weird to me to talk about mentor because people hear hierarchy, right? They hear, oh, this is like from on high, the mentorship, right? My thing is everyone here is a mentor, right? So this is relevant to everyone. There's someone here that knows more about SEO than anyone else. Who is that, by the way? Because I need some help with the website. Right? I mean, there's an SEO person here that's like amazing, I'm sure, right? If that person teaches everyone else a little bit about SEO, and then you teach that person a little bit about whatever you know, it's an extremely powerful, like, long-term effect. And so the secret weapon of great entrepreneurial communities is sustained cultures of mentorship, right? That we all think of ourselves that way, and we're all willing to give first and help, right? So what makes a mentor great is the desire to actually be helpful, right? So a lot of investors will come by Techstars looking to invest. But we have to teach them, that's not actually helpful, right? It might be helpful later, right? But it's not helpful right now because these companies are trying to figure things out. So share your experiences. We're really trying to change the definition of mentorship to not be this hierarchical thing.
Right.
What makes a good mentor? I think a questioning, sort of Socratic approach, right? Like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, and I'm going to try to pull out the issues. And then when I'm sharing my opinion, I'm going to be clear that it's just my opinion. I'm not going to be frustrated or upset if you do something different. In fact, I want that data. What makes a poor mentee is that they don't close the loop on the feedback. So I want you to do X, you do Y, but you never tell me because you don't want to hurt the relationship, right? You want to go against me. But in reality, Y would be data to me, right? I'd like to know what happened. Were you right and I was wrong? Or was I right and I got more validation that I was right? So, don't forget to close that loop. I think mentors have to share from real experiences. This is what happened to me. Not anytime you have a mentor that says, "This is the answer," look out, right? Nothing in startups is 100% right all the time. It's so rare, right? So you're looking for someone that understands that and mentors in that context.
It's similar to a relationship with a customer, right? I mean, you want to have that dialogue with the customer they're getting the feedback, they're closing the loop, you've reached whatever it is you're reaching, right? I mean, it's kind of that same type of relationship. So you talk a lot about community. Give us a sense of what community means to Techstars.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm going to ask the next question after that.
Give me a sense of what community means to Techstars. So, we started using the word ecosystem a lot more. I think community is local, right? Generally speaking, if you can have a really powerful community, it's like the startup grind community globally is awesome, right? The local one is where you're going to get most of the actual benefit from it. It's good to have a network, which is broader, and it's good to have that network be part of an ecosystem, which is, to me, even broader. To me, the community is the alumni, it's the mentors, it's the people who've applied, and hopefully we've helped in some small way. Like, we try to answer, when people say, why didn't we get in, we try to be helpful and give a little feedback. Usually it's either because we're dumb and we just missed, or we don't have a crystal ball. Actually, the reason is always we just like other stuff better, right? That's usually the reason. It's the investors, it's the service providers, it's the spaces. I mean, it's, to me, that the ecosystem of all of that is what we're trying to balance. So if everybody in that community, in that ecosystem wins, not just the entrepreneurs who are the focus of the attention, but if the people who are giving first into the network, mentors, they win, that's awesome, right? If the people who are providing free legal services win somehow, that's awesome. If investors win by getting good investments, that's awesome. The powerful thing is when the whole community is in balance, right? It's not, nobody feels like they're being taken advantage of. Everybody feels like it's an open dialogue and they can get help from each other, right? And that's the thing, that if you have that globally, it would be incredibly powerful, right? And a lot of us are working on that.
Right. So when you stamped out the next Techstars, from Boulder, and you went, I think you got, what did you go through to make sure that area, that local, met, I'd say the criteria, but how did you guys pick which ones were going to be? What were some of the challenges that you guys came up with, especially maybe going overseas, for example, which there's all kinds of challenges there, but how did you guys do that?
So in 2007, we did the first program, Boulder. 2008, we were like, wow, that was cool. Like, 4 companies got acquired like in a year. It was like, wow, this is awesome, right? We did it again to make sure it wasn't a fluke, right? And then the natural thing sets in, which is, hey, we have an innovation for the innovators. Like, we've done something that will help people. And you almost start to feel like it's an obligation to grow that. And this was before there were 2,000 accelerators, right? There was Y Combinator, there was Techstars, right? That's about it. Today there's 3 launching a day, right? It's crazy. I actually think that's a good thing too, and they're investing, by the way. But the second one was Boston. So 2009, Brad went to MIT and had a big network in Boston. So we're sort of like, oh, we could test to see if this works somewhere else, and that was a natural place.
Okay.
The next few places were like that. So Andy Sack in Seattle, right? People who had already been kind of contributing to the network were the people who were saying, we need this here. So we sort of grew in a natural pattern. Then the massive inbound started. Like literally everyone, I mean, there's not a city in the world that you've heard of that hasn't said, hey, can we bring this here? And we obviously can't do that. One of our core values is quality over quantity, right? So we still fund 10 companies at a time and not 100, because you can't actually help 100 at a time, right? So we wanted to grow in a model that allowed us to maintain that core belief.
Okay.
So scale was go do the same thing somewhere else, not do a lot more of the thing that isn't going to scale well here, right? International, I'll tell the story. Chicago and London are actually the same. So I mentioned Give First a couple times. You hear that in this community a lot in different variants, but that happens to be the hashtag that we like, if you want to use it. And in 2011, I mean, accelerators are popping up all over the place. And I was being called like every day, hey, can you help us launch an accelerator? I don't know how many of you have competitors that call you and say, can you help me launch something that's just like what you're doing? Or how you would treat that. But our reaction to that was, sure. And people always say, why do you want to help people do that? I said, well, core value helps more entrepreneurs, right? Like, if they're investing money and they're getting the best mentors in their community to help, how can this be bad, right? That was our attitude. So Obama launched this thing called Startup America. We contributed the open source Techstars, basically. Here's how we do it, here's the budget, here's the legal, here's the template, here, go copy it. And 2 of the people that copied it were John Bradford in the UK and Troy Hancock in Chicago.
Okay.
There were dozens of others, right, that joined the network. I think there's 80 accelerators that were in that network thing. Those 2 were really, really good, turns out, right? Well, because we helped them get going, there was a natural affinity, right? And we acquired both of them for free later on in life, right? Because they wanted to be part of something bigger and more powerful. So it was our way of helping people replicate it and then picking the good ones back into the system, right? And we need to do more of that. That's how we got to London.
Okay.
Right, and then opportunity, we had a guy that was helping us run the London program that was from Berlin, who wanted to move back to Berlin and was awesome, right? So a lot of it's opportunistic, coupled with like good communities that you want to be in.
Okay. So do you see a variance or any type of difference between the types of startups, let's say in Berlin, for example, versus Seattle versus Boulder? I mean, you're tech focused.
Yeah.
Is there differences, nuances that are maybe they're driven by, I don't know, the local community there, maybe it's driven by compliance or federal components or policy or whatever. Do you see differences there? And if so, how do you address that?
Yeah, in Berlin, a lot of people speak German.
I noticed that when I was there once.
You speak English too. So.
Yes.
I think, look, we're focused on, internet technology, right? IT, software. You go all over the world and people are thinking, about a lot of the same things.
Right.
There is no good idea that there aren't 10 companies working on, right? It's crazy to me. Like, you don't see that in a local community, but from my perspective, it's the same stuff, right? At least 90% is the same stuff over and over again. Yes, in New York you see more fashion,
Right.
you see more fintech. In Seattle, yes, you see more travel and gaming, right? But 90% of the stuff is in common, and it's actually pretty rare where you see something that's like, wow, like I've never seen that before, right? As an investor, we see about, I think we're about 14,000 applicants a year now. Right?
That's awesome.
Across the world, and we categorize them, and the truly different ones that like, oh my gosh, like SpaceX, they're really going for it, are pretty rare. And the thing is, it turns out it doesn't matter. Bill Gates started this thing. Have you ever heard of Bill Gates? He started this thing that people know as Microsoft. When he first started it, he was actually measuring traffic data. He had a little box that had a black cable that went across the road, and every time a car went by, he would increment the counter. It turns out it was bigger than that. Right? So I'm not a huge believer in like the thing you're starting on is too small. I'm a bigger believer in you do something awesome and you get permission to do something bigger. So I think about the market. So while I don't get too concerned about it, it's amazingly similar, like around the world. Entrepreneurs they have the same spirit, they have the same philosophies, right? And a lot of what they're doing is, it's usually not, wow, that's completely different.
Right.
It's a lot of incremental stuff and small innovation, right? And those things turn into big things, right? And that's okay.
Right. You have a lot of, in your book that you wrote, you and Brad wrote, right? There's some things in there that you talk about when it comes to an entrepreneur. Just for example, one is show, not tell. You want to talk a little bit about what that means to you?
Show, don't tell.
Show, don't tell?
Show, don't tell. Can you be my role model? Yeah, Chris. Can you take a 360 for the audience? Yeah. He's showing, and so a lot of people have walked up to me and said, hey, this is what we do. He'll ask you to swipe his iPad and show you what he does, right? And if a picture is 1,000 words, it's that kind of thing, right? It's when you actually see the product and you lead with the product and you tell your story through the product, it's very powerful. Sometimes you have to dress up like a little weird or whatever, but you get your point across.
Awesome, right?
Different, I should say. Right, but it's that kind of thing. It attracts you. It's like, oh, he's interesting. What's he going to show me? So when we do demo days, we don't allow like VC pitch decks. If you've ever been to a Techstars demo day, it's very little words, right? It's a lot of image. So when you're telling your story, have that app out, right? And tell the story through it, right? So I think this is something that a lot of people think that they're supposed to present a certain way, but in the early stage, what I really care about is the product. I want to get excited about it.
Yeah, show
Right?
it.
So just show it.
So with that, there's certain elements I would imagine that you probably prefer when someone comes into Techstars and wants to get in, and you look at certain things. What are some of the characteristics that you look at from a startup, whether it's a two-person or three-person or whatever?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you look for?
So, we talk about the 6 criteria a lot, that we're scoring on. Team, product, market, idea, right? So product is like doing stuff. Progress, product. Team, heavy focus on who are these people, and people say, well, how do you know, what are you really looking for in team? That's pretty vague. This is early stage. Your market is probably going to stay the same. Your product is probably not. And your idea is almost certainly not.
Yep.
Right? And so you can't weigh that too much, over the course of a 10-year successful startup. So team. We're looking for people that have a source of passion, right, that is identifiable and not a spreadsheet, right? If your source of passion is I can make a lot of money doing this, it just doesn't usually work, in my experience. Yep. Because when it gets hard, you give up, right? And I know this is going to be hard, right? Well, it's going to be hard, right? We all know that. So why are you doing? What's your why? Why are you doing the thing you're doing? Right? That's the first thing I always want to understand. Why are you doing it together as a team? Right? Why? A lot of people hear that as you have to be, eating your own dog food, solving your own problem. I actually don't think that's true. That's a lot of the time what it is. Like ScriptPad, we had a company in the older Techstars program that, pretty simple idea was prescriptions on an iPad. His dad had almost died because of a written prescription where the wrong drug was issued, and he was pissed. Like this was driving him, right? That's an awesome source of passion, right? So that's the solve a problem you've been associated with. My first company was ambulance dispatch. We talked about. I wasn't passionate about ambulance dispatch, but if you jump in that ambulance and you ride around for a day, it's pretty easy to get passionate about the work they do, right? People are falling down the street, need your help, you gotta get there fast. I'm gonna create that software. I can do that well, right? You get into the problem and you talk about it in a way where you have a vision of the future of the world, right, that you're not going to rest until you hit. And that vision is not about your bank account, it's about the change that you affect. Mm-hmm. So we're looking for that in team. Product progress, that's just, I have this theory, I'm not sure if it's right, but I think that entrepreneurs actually do stuff. I might be wrong, but there's this other type that doesn't ever actually do anything, and that's a red flag for me. So if you don't have some kind of product, some kind of progress, I'm probably not interested because you're waiting for permission or money or something, right? So I want to see that progress in that product. I want you to be passionate about the product. You know everything about it. You know what's good, what's bad, what needs to change, how it works, everything. Market, I want to be in a market that's either big or shrinking. Shrinking markets are awesome, right? A lot of good opportunity there. So it's a market.
Why is that?
Because it creates new markets, right? Anybody know the taxi cab industry? Growing, shrinking? Anybody know? I think it's shrinking, right? Interesting. You're in that same market, but you're going to change it, right? The taxi industry, as we knew it, totally changed. It's the dynamic of change is what you're after. If you're in a market where it's super stable and super saturated with technology, you have very minor innovation and change. You've seen, probably a lot of people have seen the Venn diagram. I can't remember who did it, but it sounds like a really bad idea, right? Is one circle, and is actually a really good idea. A lot of the static market stuff is a really good idea. Like it's incremental improvement. It's good. But the money's made in sounds like a bad idea and actually is a good idea, right? And no one thought it was going to change that much. And then, idea, I put it last because I like to point out that it's last. It actually doesn't, it doesn't have a huge impact. Your idea is going to change a lot. It's kind of bonus points, but I like to point out that we look at it last.
Bonus points. Yeah. Okay, so with that said, you had said something before, I think I read somewhere about business plans. What's your thought about a business plan? Do you need a business plan? Do you be more random as we talked about?
I think we should just change the name to Business Fantasy. Wouldn't that be better?
Sure.
Don't get me wrong. I love business plans for you. You should write a business plan, whatever that means to you, because it will force you to think about stuff. I don't want to see it. Like, to me, it's not interesting. What I want to see is what you're doing and what's the product, and you tell me about it, right? I want to get excited with you. But, the fact that you've done the business plan will probably help you, when I say stuff like, well, how are you going to take this to the market, right? What's your strategy? You probably thought about that, right? Because you checked off the box that they teach you in business school, right? The idea that you should win a startup competition because you have the best business plan, to me, is idiotic, frankly. It happens here a lot. But, who cares? Business plans don't make money.
Right.
So we don't ask for them. We don't read them. I've invested probably $40 to $50 million now. So far, I've never read a business plan for any startup I've ever invested in.
That's pretty interesting.
So
I got to go back to this. So you have a person come to you and they're showing you something. What's the quickest pitch that you got? And you said, I'm in. Is it faster than Brad's, or is it?
Wouldn't it be a good story if I said we were like, I mean, that took about an hour. I was like, what?
Okay.
It took me a while. But I got
An
it.
hour's not bad.
It's
That's
pretty
good.
I've invested in, I think like Brad, when he invested in Techstars, about 10 minutes.
I mean, what was compelling about was well, obviously it was the person, their personality, was it?
So to be fair, like I'm thinking about a particular company that was probably, like they had sent me an email. An email said, here's what we're doing, and click here and play with the product, which is what I like, right? I then was on Sand Hill Road in the Bay Area, and I tweeted, this is pre-Uber, right? I tweeted, heading back to the Bay Area, anybody want to give me a lift, right? It's Pitch Taxi.
Pitch, yeah.
You haven't seen that show. Pitch Taxi is really cool. Like, if you're an investor, you can get people to give you rides to the airport, it turns out. So this guy responded to Twitter and luckily didn't kill me. He instead took me to the airport, which was, I don't know, 25-minute ride, something. And, in the first 10 minutes, I'm like, I'm in. Like, I love it, right? It was a mapping infrastructure, like, just Google Maps or whatever, that actually reflected all the social activity, right? And it was all 3D. It was just really cool. So, he's showing me that, and I'm like, oh, I love this, I'm in. Right, well, what's the deal, by the way? Right, like it was the last thing. He was like, well, hold on, before I say I'm in, like, what exactly are the terms? I was like, I don't know, 4 million per. Okay. Right, seems reasonable. Right? Like, literally that kind of conversation.
Okay.
Did he have the product tangible there?
Yeah, he had the product in the car, right? So I'm just sitting there playing with it. And he's telling me about it, and you could feel the passion. It was really well done. He was like so excited about what he had created. It's called Up Next. I don't know if anybody ever played with that, but Apple ended up buying it. And then promptly killed it, I think. That happens.
That happens.
But yeah, it was. I could feel all that stuff, and today, back then that was my money. So recognize the difference between angel investors and venture capitalists. Angel investors will often do that. I know lots of friends that do angel investment just right away they're in. VCs tend to take longer, have longer process. It's other people's money, so you're being a little more careful. But many of the best investments I've ever made were one meeting, less than an hour. Right? Due diligence will kill the best ideas. Right? So we try not to do too much. It's feel, it's gut in a lot of cases about the future.
Yeah. Well, that kind of goes with the entrepreneurial side as well. You're going with the gut sometimes. Just got to figure out whether it works or not, right?
I mean, due diligence, the process that people go through. I mean, for a $25,000 investment can be like worse than a $10 million investment. Like, some of you have been exposed to angel groups or whatever, right? Like, it's like, oh my God, it's like pulling teeth, right? To just get to the next meeting. I find that process, like everybody's talking themselves out of it. And that gut feel in that first moment, the first few minutes with someone, the passion, excitement you have, everything else is like, well, how can I talk myself out of this? Right? And I can see the future that this person's talking about, and it's a huge impact. I want to be involved.
Right.
And if I think they can do it, so I think the best investors are largely gut.
So, go back to the mentor a little bit. How do you match? Is there a matching? You talk about patterns and whatever, matching people with the right people.
Yeah.
Explain a little bit how that process works, or how does that actually?
Yeah. Cool. Do you mind if I answer a totally different question?
Yeah, it's fine.
Because I forgot to say something earlier
Go ahead.
about how we select.
Yes.
And then I'll answer your
Okay.
question.
Very good. It's your show.
Cool. So first of all, understand the matching process in general. When people apply to Techstars, the first thing we do is we number the applications, right, 1 through 1,000. If you're an odd number, we immediately eliminate the company. So we don't like to find unlucky people, right? Joke. The matching process for mentors is much more scientific. What we do, so we have 100 mentors in 10 companies, right? The first month we call Mentor Madness. It's crazy, like it's unsustainable. You basically meet with like pretty much everybody. And you're 15, 20-minute meetings, sometimes they're a little longer. You're talking about what you do. The mentors are rolling through in the first month. The idea is that you're getting like a tremendous amount of feedback. and you will get what we call mentor whiplash.
Yep.
Right? Like,
We like
they
to
said
say
that,
that,
they said
yeah.
that, but for sure people are going to disagree, right? This process forces you to get conviction about what you're doing, and so we literally parade people through. Like, we want to overwhelm you, get you off the keyboard, get you thinking about what the hell you're doing, right? Oh, by the way, you're building network. Right, so you're meeting some pretty incredible people who have an impression of you and maybe know someone, right, that they can introduce you to, a customer or whatever. At the end of the month, we have what we call lead mentors as a construct. So each company will have typically 2 to 5 lead mentors.
Okay.
It's a completely natural process. We sometimes say, hey, this person might be good. The entrepreneur has to pick the mentor, and the mentor has to pick the entrepreneur. So there's no arranged marriages. If you get no mentors, that's pretty good market data that you suck. Right? And so you're sitting there like, nobody loves me, right? That company has, like, you just see the market data. Like, people are excited. They have no economic stakes, so they're not picking the best economic opportunity necessarily in their mind. They're picking the people they like the most, or that they are excited the most about what they're doing. But when nobody picks you, it's sort of like, huh, right? We're having to force that a little bit, and it's good data for us. Throughout the second and third month, you work with your lead mentors only. People, you have ad hoc interactions, but primarily you're focused, with those few people. They're hopefully waking up and thinking about you in the morning a little bit, right? And it's a sort of a temporary advisory board, if you will.
Right.
And then their responsibility, introduce me to customers, push me to get the product in the market. It becomes a social game. I want my company to be the coolest company on demo day. Right? My friends are mentoring this other company. We're going to kick their ass.
That's right.
And so you get this friendly, like, I got to help more than the other people, right? And they're rooting for them on demo day, and they become the social proof of that company. An investor wants to know, are they any good? Well, I've been working with them for 3 months.
Right.
Whether or not they're investing, who cares, right? But they know them, and they're trusted in the network. So that social proof is really important for fundraising. If you don't like what I'm talking about, you just leave. Don't push it. Okay. So at the end, they've hopefully become very close to those lead mentors who they'll still communicate with even today throughout their career.
So I'm assuming that some mentors that are in there, they will actually invest in companies that are there. How often does that happen?
A lot. So mentors invest a lot. They get emotionally involved. They're working with you and they're seeing your progress. And gee, it would be so helpful if I could get a start to my round. And what we're doing, that's another secret of the model, is we're creating new angel investors.
Right.
So people who, like the guys at Rally, right? Long time mentors at Techstars, the company just went public. Some people made some money, right? They're now getting emotionally involved with new companies, and it's very likely that it's the birthing of new angel investors every year, right? So if you look at who really makes angel investments in Colorado, they're on the mentor list, a lot of them. Now, not everybody does that,
Right.
but it just, you have a safe context to do it with your friends. They're doing it. Sure, I'll chip in 25K, right? It's fun. I feel good about it. I'm emotionally connected to this company, these people, this idea, right? And then they start doing it more, which is just a build in the community. The coolest part is when the alumni come back and angel invest, right? That's like, okay. Techstars is a network that is permeable, right, by the outside. If you give first and help, nobody in the Techstars network in the future is going to go to Sand Hill Road and pitch. That's a stupid, outdated construct. Those people are going to come help those companies if they have a shot at investing. Right? That's the future vision that we have. It's not hierarchical, it's network. Participate if you want to play. Right? And yes, investors are being created in that world.
So you talked about the types of investors before, and you said developers are the current investing group, right?
Yeah, this was
It was a
one
while
of the tech conferences, like RubyCon or something.
And what did you mean by that? What's the
Developers and
the next?
investors is what I said.
Yes.
How many of you are looking for a software engineer? Please raise your hand. Come on, be real.
Be real.
Nobody in the back is looking for an engineer. Can't believe it. Okay. A lot of people, right? Okay, so if there's like a really talented software developer, right? That pops free that everybody knows. It's like a fight, right? It's like we're going to kill each other to get this.
Get the guy,
We need this talent, right? It's so rare. It's hard to find, right? They're picking by where they work the companies that are raising money because the investors know, where that scarce talent is, and so it's we're following. Investors are following those people. Guess what? Today it's changing a little bit. Now it's designers. Right? We all seek the incredible design talent, right? That made the iPhone and things like that. Just people expect that now, right? And so wherever those people are going, investors, by going there, you're actually potentially funding that company because it's a signal. That's what you want to work on, right? So it's a thing that people don't recognize that's happening in the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Do you see the investment opportunities? People investing here specifically within the Front Range. Techstars started 2007. You've been doing this for a while. Do you see it continuing to grow? Do you see it plateauing off at some point in time here down the road a ways? Yeah. What are some of the things that we as a community here could do to keep it vibrant, keep it going?
Well, the best way to keep it going is to build awesome companies because it turns out people want to invest in awesome companies. Right, so like that's the energy. We're going to go through a downturn. It's going to happen. It's still summer for startups. Like this is awesome, right? It's easier now to raise money than it has been in a long time. Valuations are up, right? Like okay, this is the market cycle, right? It's a sine wave. It's just going to go up and down. It's coming. I don't know when, a year or 2 years. Angel investors will lose a lot of their money in the markets when that happens. The ones that are really there for long term will just keep doing what they're doing,
right,
and have a good strategy. But money gets tight in the early stage when that happens. If we continue to have interesting things, we'll always have capital, right? And I do see it growing still today. There are people around Techstars that weren't investing 2 years ago that are now.
Okay.
Right? There are people who are moving here, by the way. I know of a new. I'm trying to count the number. So there's a new fund, Blue Note in Boulder.
Yeah.
Galvanize has a fund, by the way, if you don't know that. I don't know where Nick is, but awesome. There's a new, I think, $150 million fund. That's what we have in Boulder. There's another new one that people don't know about yet that's about to launch in Boulder. All aimed at early stage. Like, there's capital out there, and 3-4 years ago, Boulder really had, 2 active VCs, right?
Yeah.
And now there's, 6, 7, 8, right, that have new funds that are out there, right? Some of them are small and some of them are big, right? So the capital base is growing. Oh, by the way, the other really important thing not to forget about for us is bridges to, Silicon Valley, Boston, New York.
Right.
The super connectors, Brad, the partners of Foundry, us to some extent, like people will come invest with us, right? Most of the money flowing into Colorado venture capital is not from Colorado.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to.
Right? Growth Tech, you see all these funds coming in that are like, this is the 5th largest state for venture capital in the country, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we should come here and see what's going on. And they will co-invest with people who are on the ground here that, are also invested because it's kind of hard to just drop in if you're from the East Coast to invest and then sort of not be here. You want somebody on the board that's from here. So building more people that have that credibility nationally is a powerful thing.
Yeah. Now you said that again. It's the 5th most invested area in the country.
State.
State.
For venture capital.
Yeah, which is awesome.
And it was number 4. I don't know what happened, like Seattle or something.
Somebody bumped us out.
Yeah, we gotta
do something about that.
I mean, it went way up when they passed the marijuana laws.
Yeah. It's a competition. So, real quick, you had some successes and failures. Give us some ideas about what were the key components to success and lessons learned for the lessons learned.
from my personal
Yes,
experiences.
absolutely. Yeah.
Not the investments, because I just imagine what went wrong with those companies, right? But in my
You
personal,
kind of go, woo.
so the first company, it's back to the stuff I was talking about earlier. Like, we actually, gave a crap about the ambulances that we were dispatching, right? We cared. We made every employee go on a ride along. And if you've never ridden on an ambulance, like it's kind of life changing. Like, to see what these people, they're heroes, right? Like they're showing up in crazy situations, right? People are hurt, and you can get passionate about it. So I think that one worked because, we just would not stop until the software was smarter, right? Like we told the ambulance companies where to place the ambulance based on traffic flow, time of day, likelihood of an accident or injury, like all this kind of deep data, right? That we just were obsessed about. And the exit story of that company is a failure. Like, it was a big success. Like, it was a great outcome, and I'm super grateful for that outcome. We sold it to a public company, but 4 years later, the CEO of the public company said to me and David Brown, "You guys know you left half the money on the table?"
Ouch.
I was like, "You asshole. Why would you say that?" Right? Like, thanks. So now I can't sleep. Like, what do you mean you left half the money on the table? Oh, we were willing to pay twice as much. Well, this is not an insignificant, exit, right? So we left half the money on the table. Like, what did we do wrong? And what we realized we did wrong is we didn't have anybody who had ever done it before. We didn't have anybody on our team that had ever sold a company. Stupid, right? Like, if you guys are going to sell your company, call somebody that's done it like 50 times. You'll double your money, right? Give them 1%, it won't matter, right? Like, it's literally that kind of thing.
It's worth it.
Right?
Yep.
And so now anytime I see, Techstars companies is selling for $5 million, like, get on the phone and sell it for 10, right? Like, I see that play out all the time at Techstars now, because they have a mentor that's done it a bunch and knows how to get leverage.
Right.
So that was, passion, thing we cared about. I think we had a pretty good team. I think we messed up the exit, but turned out okay. The company's public stock went 5x after we sold, so that helped a little bit. That was good. But it could have been 10x,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the second company was a disaster because we sat around and we said, okay, we're awesome. We can do anything. We're invincible, right? Like, let the bands get back together. What should we do? Let's go for cool, right? Let's build eye contact. Has anybody ever heard of eye contact? Yeah, that's not us. That's Ryan Alice. Started the company when he was 18. It's an email marketing company. I sold him the domain name after our company, Contact, failed. It's the most money we ever made by far. And I should have taken equity because he sold the company for $430 million or something. That was not my eye contact. My eye contact was like Foursquare, We literally said, before we were enterprise software with ambulance, let's do consumer. Before we were desktop, let's do mobile, right? Before we wrote in C++, let's do Java. Like, let's go learn because we're just awesome, right? Let's use the cool new stuff. We just did everything that was cool, and it was not from the heart. It was from, like, we want to be cool, right?
Yep.
And we are not cool, like, you can tell. Right? So that just did not work, right? That miserable failure, we lost a bunch of money, whatever. We actually returned a little bit of investor money, so I felt okay about that. But, the next company was the music thing, and that was such a short life. Like, it was 6 months and we sold it.
In 6
I
months.
didn't think it was a real business. I didn't think it was going to get huge, and I wanted to do more investing.
Wow.
And so we sold it pretty quickly.
Nice.
Techstars asked me in 20 years. I don't know. We could be losing a lot of money, right? $1.1 billion of other people's money have gone into these companies. I hope it works out. It's going to take a while. It's a long-term asset class, so you have to wait for it.
Yeah.
We're 70 people now in 15 different places. We're super distributed. That's hard. Right? It's hard to communicate. That's not ideal. We're managing $300 million now of our own money, right? We could lose all of that. I don't know, right? Like, we think we're good at it, but in this business, you don't know for a long time.
Right, right. Well, cool. I was going to take some questions. You ready for questions?
Yeah, I would love questions.
You love questions.
I have a question about the mentors. You said that they're volunteering their time. How much time do they commit? I know
Yeah.
that they only have so much time.
Yeah, so they're all really busy people. How much time do
How much time
mentors
does
actually commit?
Yep.
It varies. We have some that we call mentors in residence that are there like all the time. That's pretty rare. The ask from us is an hour a week, right? So it's pretty light. We usually get a lot more than that. If the mentor's really into the company, they'll show up a lot and they'll be thinking about it a lot. It might be an equivalent of a day and a half or 2 days a week that they're actually thinking that's a lot, right? For 13 weeks. One of the beautiful things about Techstars is it's once a year and it's short term. So if you're a super busy person that gets all kinds of pitches in your email, you can say, I do that through Techstars and refer them, right? And then when they get in, then you have a quality context to engage with. So they like it. It's kind of a service to them because they want to give back and help. But they want to do it in the most impactful way, and they love doing it with their peers. So it's reasonably light ask that they usually overdo.
Cool. Thank you. Yes, sir.
In your words, the difference between an incubator and an accelerator.
Yeah. So.
And also, there's collectives now referring to themselves as pre-accelerator.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wanted to hear.
I didn't know there was anything before what we do, but what's the difference between an incubator and an accelerator, and what the heck is a pre-accelerator? Fair? Did I replay it reasonably well? Okay. Accelerators invest money, and they're short term, right? They have a defined period of time, and they invest money. If you're not doing that, and you're not doing it on reasonable terms, you're not an accelerator, you're some other thing. Incubators typically don't invest money, don't really have a fixed duration, right? They're more about come here, be a part of our building. They're more about the space. They often have mentors around, right? But it's not such a defined process. It's usually not cohort based, right? So we wanted to be differentiated from incubators because there was a huge run up in incubators, back in the day, and then a huge fall off when the VCs all decided that they couldn't pay enough attention to that. We actually invented this accelerator word. There was another group that was trying to call them combinators that didn't win. Everybody's a combinator. We're like, no, that's stupid. Right? So we won that fight and we thought accelerator. Pre-accelerator, there are, as I mentioned earlier, 99% of companies that apply to Techstars do not get in. There are now groups like Up Global who are doing education around, let us help you get ready for seed capital, let us help you get ready for an accelerator, either or. We've funded 10 or 15 companies that have come out of a process like that. They generally are not-for-profit, don't take equity, just sort of trying to be helpful. So we've seen some success from that. But I think it's a relatively new phenomenon, the pre-accelerator. Now there's post-accelerators too, by the way, which that's cool. I think that the irony of post-accelerator is the hottest companies coming out of the accelerator don't really need anything else because they raised $5 million and have a board and access to capital, right? So now they don't want, the program. They want to just be free, right? And that's always why 3 months is really short, right? The duration, but if you do it much longer, right, the urgency goes away, and the mentorship is harder to sustain.
Okay, that's a good point. In the back first, right there.
Yeah, so you mentioned in the beginning, you had this goal of creating Boulder into a better ecosystem, a better community for startups. And as a person who's grown up outside Colorado, a startup community, I've always followed Boulder and Denver and this whole startup scene, which led me to coming. I'm wondering, you've done a lot of marketing for Boulder and for the area here, whether it be through like Brad Bell's, Startup Communities books and through just marketing Techstars. I'm wondering how much of that was actually planned specifically to bolster the community, or whether it was more just a, hey, we're Techstars, we're just going to try to be awesome.
Yeah. We suck at marketing, so it's not that. We definitely suck at marketing. We just hired our first marketing person this year, by the way. So I would say deliberate in terms of attitude. So when I go around and I talk to other startup communities, I tell them about a couple things. One is the unspoken rule of the Colorado communities, which is whenever we're speaking somewhere else, we spend like 5 to 10 minutes talking about where we're from and how awesome it is, right? If you go to, I said this in Omaha, there was like 1,000 people, they do this annual like award thing. And I was like, I can't hear you guys. Like, and when I do hear you, you're just talking about how it sucks. Like, that's not helpful, right? Like, what's helpful is you talk about him and she talks about you, and right? Like that's the sort of rising tide. And so, we're good at that, I think, in this community, is sort of, act like what you want to become. Right? Like my first blog, I started blogging about startups and angel investing, and suddenly that's what it was, right? So, I mean, I think you have to have pride to have a startup community that gets taken seriously. You go to a lot of startup communities, it's just like, oh, woe is me, there's no capital, and blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? That's how it used to be here. Still kind of is, right? I mean, we need more, but so deliberate in terms of wanting that to be part of why it got better. And I think, we all need to do more of that, right? So it wasn't marketing, but it was deliberate, and we want this to be a better place to invest. And it's only going to get that way if somebody like you reads a blog and moves here, right? Because you think it's awesome, right? And then you get here and you discover it's kind of shitty. No. Yeah.